Hello and welcome to Self-Talk. My name is Danko Sidorowski, your host. To my right I have Herb Martin, a life coach and psychotherapist. And our guest today is John Barrows. Barrow. And welcome to our show. I really am thankful that you are here, and let's get right into it. Tell us a little bit about who you are.
My name is John Barrow. I'm a Metro Detroiter, born and raised here in Detroit, and I'm in the entertainment business. My brother and I have been in the media business for over 20 years. We've actually worked with a number of recording artists from a consultant standpoint, from a management standpoint, and we develop brands for a living. And our recent project is we've kind of endeavored in the last few years into the film industry, and we currently have a major project under development entitled "Inspiration of a Hero: The Joe Louis Story."
Tell us a little bit about what's your relation to Joe Louis?
Well, I'm a family member. Joe's in my family. In fact, Joe and my grandfather were brothers. So there's a lot of history there, from a point of relationship that, we have a story that I think that, needs to be told.
So growing up, that kind of a hero in your family, what did that mean as far as how did that define you?
It really gave me a reaching point. It was like a great sense of pride knowing that someone in your family had accomplished, such great things, not just on a local level, but on a global level. It meant that, you also had that very same blood running through your veins, that, you also could achieve great things. Granted, you were willing to put the work in just as Joe did. So, I mean, for us, it was just, a testament of what could be. If you just believe in yourself and be willing to, put the work in.
What's interesting to me is I'm trying to picture growing up as being part of the Joe Louis family and the stories that could have been, well, I remember when Joe did this, or I remember how Joe did. Did you ever meet Joe Louis?
Yeah, actually, I've had an opportunity when I was younger, prior to him passing, where he would come to town for various events, related to the, Joe Louis Arena, and my dad, having the relationship he had with Joe would bring him home, and he would kind of hang out around the house. But I mean, he's just very humble man, very inspiring man, and encouraging. He's always, pat you on the back and tell you how proud he was of you, at whatever stage in your life you were, because that was his thing, about taking care of his family. He believed in, family was first.
So what kinds of things do you think during this project, you're working on describe, is it a biography about Joe Louis?
Somewhat. We kind of tried to, create a project that was kind of unique, and very rich in concept. We integrated, actually there's 3 different stories that are integrated in our film. One being that of Joe Louis, he's a very monumental and very, iconic figure. And then what we also did in our efforts to bring more of a younger audience to the theater, we've created a modern day story which integrates the life of a young character who shows how the influence of his uncle Joe Louis, helped him, prevail during, when challenges were met. And then thirdly, there's a portion of it that shows the historical impact that his fight with Max Melling, how they had on the world in the World War II efforts, against Adolf Hitler.
And we were talking about that. What Joe Louis did wasn't just for Detroit or just for America. He showed the world what anyone could do. And so the interesting part here is when telling this story, I don't think a lot of our viewers and people, even in the Metro Detroit area, understand that. And from your perspective, what do you think he contributed to Detroit, to America, to the world?
I think Joe Louis was an iconic person, and in saying so, he sort of represents in my mind to America that people can be the way he was, in the sense that he gave with his talent and with his fortitude for being fair, fighting fair, the best, knocking out a guy and never bragging, but giving of himself, and that is what we need today. He writes a story about that today, and the root is the most important part of anything, because in that growth, and the tree is strong when young kids understand being a person that gives, that's a reciprocal kind of thing. And the lessons and what he gave, which we will talk about that a little bit, and for the people who didn't know Joe Louis, and I'm old enough to have seen his fights and his hero-ness, you know, what, if that's a word, but what
was the vibe like in Detroit when Joe Louis won his most monumental fight? Because you were there, right?
Yeah. When he beat, when Hitler said he had the master race, and said he will beat him, you know, he's going to beat to the ground, and he took that off, that bet off. And for America, everybody sat at their radios watching. But it was like, boom, he could hit a guy from here, right here, and knock him out. And I've seen it over and over. Everybody would be on their radio, down the street, down the house, down.
Let me ask John this. Do you think, I mean, how great it is to have, let's say, your family to be part Joe Louis Arena. That's, every time you pass by there, you're probably like, that's my,
yeah, it is.
You know what I mean? It's like in the mind. But here's the question I have. Does this represent what he stood for? As you get into the city of Detroit, that's a big question. Was that what he stood for?
Well, that's part of it. You know, I mean, you look at, he's like a 360 individual. I mean, I think a lot of people, I've heard debates about what it represents. Some people have been, you know, even as fancy to say it represents Black Power and you know, the Black Power movement. But the thing of it is that, you know, Joe Louis's, his reign, the Black Power movement wasn't until like the 60s and the 70s. You're talking about a guy in the 30s and 40s, so clearly it doesn't represent that. And, you know, I think what it does represent, you know, to me and to our family is that, you know, it represents hope. You know, it shows, you know, the monument of what that fist did in terms of making it. You know, I mean, he came from humble beginnings. There in the Brewster Wheeler Rec Center area. You know, go right up on, you know, in McDougal. And that represented that, you know, putting the work and giving the opportunity, what you could achieve. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, you know, there are other kids from those communities, not just, you know, African American kids, but, you know, Polish kids, Jewish kids, you know, Italian kids, who also were in the rings, and it represented to them that, you know, given, you know, the opportunity and the hard work, that you also could, you know, achieve great things and become, you know, at that time a prize fighter or whatever it may be. But it gave people.
So you think that fist represents hope?
Sure, it does.
Well,
The fight for hope, the fight for fairness, the fight to be the best you can be.
you know, I'd like to just speak to that, because a fist is not enough to describe a whole man.
Well,
and
it's,
that
it's also the first thing you see when you come to our city.
yeah, but he's still a man, and just a fist is in people's mind, power and strength. But what was that whole person? And so many things. So, and I would hope that his movie showed, and even today, what happened to the whole man? What did he do? Why should we revere somebody that just hit somebody?
Yeah.
We should. I want to know that kind of man. I want to know what kind of man this guy is.
Yeah.
I want to know what kind of man you are,
right.
or I wouldn't even be here.
Right.
And you hit hard when you want to,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I like you. So he hit, but he didn't get enough of it. Now we're going to talk about this man, what he did, and men do things, fists don't do things. So this is symbolic. And at that time, people didn't understand that.
Well, that's, you know, the self-talk that goes through your mind during this process is what interests us and our viewers the most. Is what are some of the challenges, what are some of your own things that you're working on to get this accomplished?
Well, I'll just say first and foremost, this has probably been the most challenging thing I've ever worked on, you know, moving forward. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been involved in numerous, you know, endeavors over the years. However, this is probably the most challenging. And part and place being because, you know, lack thereof experience in the film industry. But, you know, you have to start somewhere. I think secondarily, it's been, you know, finding the blueprint to accomplish this, because, I mean, truth be told, the film industry really isn't here in Metro Detroit. So what that required on my behalf is a lot of networking, a lot of phone calls, a lot of conference calls, getting on the phone with individuals who'd be willing to share their knowledge. And I like to recognize and acknowledge a couple of people today. I've had numerous conversations with Antoine Fisher, not the actor who portrayed him, but the actual producer, writer, Antoine Fisher. I've had conversations with, you know, Yami Brown, the daughter of James Brown. These guys, Mark Pitts, you know, these guys produced the movie about Notorious, you know, the rapper. And it's just conversation like that that kind of helped me to, you know, actually articulate the direction I wanted to take this film in. I mean, and then, you know, even have all that being said, is that I think that when you're involved with something, you've got to find a way to maintain that energy, that drive to continue on, because you don't have a lot of support here. Because you know, how many of your friends are actually, you know, in the film business, or how many people you know have actually been on the set or worked on a project? And here in Metro, you know, Metro Detroit, it's at a minimum. Right. So you really have to, you know, really be clear yourself and constantly get up every day and remotivate yourself to, you know, to keep pushing forward. You know, and
how do you do that?
It's been shot every day. It's one day at a time. One day at a time. You know, it's just that I get up, and I remind myself of the legacy that I have, you know, the opportunity that I have to showcase, you know, such a great individual. I mean, that's a big weight on your shoulders to live up to that legacy.
It is. And the question I have too is, how is this movie going to be different than the James Brown movie or Ray? How is this one different, and how will it be done differently?
Oh my God. I mean, you're talking about, we have taken the time to develop a storyline that actually I feel would draw, you know, film patrons to the theater, not just by way of traditional way of marketing a film. I mean, our process, our direction is to engage people in the process. You know, since we start to shoot this film, you'll see events going on, you know, nationwide, where we allow, you know, film patrons to get an opportunity to meet the characters, to identify with them, you know, to learn a little bit more about the history of Joe Louis, what he stands for. We'll be doing a series of concerts and things, integrating with, you know, maybe some of the actors that we have during the production process, so that we build momentum for it. And I think this is a story that shows young people, and rather than doing the traditional biopic like everybody else has, we've created a storyline that engages, you know, and shows you know, the impact of how can I apply this to my life today? You know, when I walk from the movie theater, you know, I want you to come away with something. I want you to come away with, you know, with a sense of hope and that you can make a difference in your community, just as the characters in my film has, just as Joe Louis has, just as, you know, this shows the impact of what he had with World War II to go out, you know, and be impactful in your own community. You know, it's a film that I think it needs to be told, and we chose to do this in a way that, you know, we could, you know, we actually took into account what people want to see when they come to the theaters. You know, the people want to see actors they know, actors they like, with music they like. You know, we're very creative with this, and it's not the stereotypical cookie cutter biopic. I mean, we've integrated elements from films that, you know, like Quentin Tarantino is a, you know, big fan of him. You know, the Hughes brothers. You know, F. Gary Gray. You know, Antoine Fuqua. I mean, all these directors, these producers of these films, that had certain key elements that kind of gave them their signature away from what everybody else is doing, and we kind of developed our own signature. We wanted to create projects that embrace and inspire the masses.
So it's going from like this time, right, and then of where our youth and our city are today, and then like showcasing back in time. And
we travel through periods of Joe Louis. We travel through periods like in, you know, in the early 2000s. Show how culture has changed on those points. I mean, because, I mean, think about it. We've been through a series of presidents and you know, economic, you know, transitions. So things change and they articulate. People's direction, people's goals and values change. So we need to showcase a little bit of that, you know, and show how the life of Joe Louis, how it can be, you know, impactful even in today's, you know, society. I mean, these young people, they need to have things, I think, that they can reference in terms of integrity and values that they're lacking.
like the simple message is, I can be somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it brings me to the next thing, is that if, I'm sure everybody's been to Ford Rotunda, right? That and you're familiar with the little place that they have for Motown, a little house that people, this is a major city, and it's a little house that doesn't represent all the things that happen in that little house. So if you want to really, really do something, you have to have a building that represents the kind of man that he is, and you have to where people can come and sit down and drink some of the things, young kids, like you go to the Rotunda, like you go to other places where it just doesn't end. It's in perpetuity. Like this happened some years ago, and now, who's this Joe Louis? And then you go to the museum. And then you need a place for that.
Are you working on a museum for Joe Louis?
We're working on a series of projects right now that will help, you know, basically, you know, carry on his legacy. I mean, to embrace his legacy. My brother and I, we recently have just filed for the nonprofit I Am Joe Louis Foundation, which would go out to work towards aiding youth and, you know, providing financial assistance to other nonprofits who support youth organizations. I mean, I think it's important that, you know, we invest some time in our kids, keep them busy so that they don't have to get and be out here. I think that's part of the problem, is that kids have too much time. They're too exposed. So I think a lot of times, you know, we do have an issue with, you know, with family structure. You know, it's a nationwide epidemic. You know, so I think that by supplementing sometimes by putting kids in organizations that provide adult supervision, that provide leadership and role models and things of that nature, that we can, you know, be impactful in that respect.
And that's all kids
of all color. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
That if I want to see my hero, I used to go to, matter of fact, I had a class in the Rotunda, and I learned so much. And one of my classes helped me get through because I had to use language skills that would enhance my thinking about things. And when I see somebody else doing something, and I don't care who it is, when a kid sees something of value, and so many today don't. Even when they go to college, because they see, you have to look at the roots of a tree to know how strong it is, how it multiplies itself, and how kids begin to see that guy did something that helped the society, and I can do it too.
And during some tough times.
And doing some tough times.
During the war.
And now.
And now.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that you're bringing this film in to a time of Detroit that we're kind of going through a rebirth of who we are.
That's right.
As a city, as a region, and how do you think that will play into what happens to Detroit?
I think it's going to be a phenomenal thing for the city of Detroit, because I think at the very core, Joe Louis represents what the city of Detroit is really all about. I mean, we're tough. I mean, we're resilient. I mean, I grew up in these same neighborhoods, you know.
They rated, not to interrupt, but they rated Detroit as the most unsexiest city in the country by one magazine. What's your take on that?
No, that's some BS. We've got some hotties here. I'm a single guy, and trust me, I get a chance to look. So trust me, that we have some hotties here in Detroit. Don't let it fool you.
I think you're touching on something, that we are so different than any other city that they don't understand are sexy.
They don't. I mean,
we're using that as a euphemism now. We're not talking about sexy, but sexy in
the power, in the fight,
in the
drive, in not giving up.
Look, we are rebuilding the city.
Hey, we've gone up and down and back around and Renaissance.
Hey, Detroiters are resilient, man. I'm here to tell you that we're very resilient. I've got associates and friends all across the country, and trust me, they respect Detroiters. We have a unique drive. You know, we have a unique sense of confidence in our abilities. So I think that'll transcend in our rebirth of the city. With Joe Louis, I think he's perfect for this. You know, for this rebirth of the city of Detroit. I mean,
it's timely.
It is. I mean, I met with the Historical Commission back here in April, and they decided to actually not to tear down the Brewster Wheeler Rec Center. We got them to approve it as a historical monument. So now they've found investors, and they're investing over $40 million into this location. We're doing a rebirth, and some things will be dedicated to Joe Louis and other legacies that came out of that.
Isn't the arena being redone too?
The arena, I'm not clear on exactly what their thing is. I know there's some. I've been hearing some ifs and some buts, but you know, but they're making some transitions as far as that. But I think the city will continue to, you know, embrace the legacy of Joe Louis, because I think, you know, here you have an American hero, you know, that, you know, in our grasp, that's from our city, who made an impact on the world. So
and his family's still here.
His family's still here. We're strong.
Yeah, he lives on through you.
Right, and people like yourself as well, man, because his impact was global. It wasn't just for the family or the African American community. It's for everybody. I mean, you got to realize that, you know, I've met people in the Jewish community that have expressed, you know, that how important that fight was in respect to, you know, their struggle, you know, their resilience, and saying that when that happened, that, you know, it gave them hope that all this thing was, you know, with Hitler and the concentration camps will come to an end soon. You know, and, you know, I'm not saying that he was directly influenced in that, but, you know, there's some value there.
Brick by brick.
And it's a lot of hope, because I see young kids that have finished college that are in the city playing music, the rebuilding, the buying buildings,
working together,
and working together in a city like like I grew up in, you know.
When it was really sexy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But Detroit's got a new face coming. I think that, you know, there are a lot of investors that are coming here. They're seeing opportunity here in Detroit. A lot of young people are getting involved in entrepreneurship. They're investing their money into the downtown, midtown areas. Even the communities as a whole I think are enriching. You know, I think the world, you know, is yet to see, you know, Detroit out. I think a rebirth is here. We're coming back strong. We've got, you know, strong government here now. They're making some good decisions, I feel. So I think with, you know, projects like mine continuing to embellish, you know, our history here, and moving forward and giving young people a sense of pride, I think
Yeah.
we're headed in the right direction.
What was the toughest part about writing this script? Because I would imagine it was real challenging.
It was, and I think probably developing the storyline, was because we wanted to have something that was authentic, that represented the city of Detroit. I think it was something that we had to take time in terms of developing the storyline. But I think just in particular, the most challenging portion of it was developing the storyline revolving around the World War II, the fights with Adolf Hitler and Max Schmeling. That was the most challenging, because in doing that research, it required us to spend an extensive amount of time learning about that era, learning about what the Holocaust and things of how that nature, and that was paralyzing. I mean,
you should have seen me then.
Yeah, I mean, terrible. I mean, it was tremendous. I mean, we visited a lot of museums, and to see the damage and the impact that that Hitler had during that reign. It was, I mean, that took a lot out of us. I mean, in fact, we had to actually take a break from the script to even get our regain our composure.
You're deep in there with that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's phenomenal. I mean, just that, and I think in this film also, I gained another respect for that era and Joe Louis at that time, because even though he was a heavyweight champ, he had these great boxing accolades, there was a lot about this man where he basically voluntarily enrolled in the army to entertain the troops, to keep the morale of the troops up, in lieu of him doing all these other things. It took a step back from professional boxing to give back to his country. I mean, you're talking about a man at a period of time that there weren't African American athletes in the mainstream. I mean, prior to Jack Johnson being the heavyweight champ, there hadn't been a black heavyweight champ in quite some time, and for them to open up and give him an opportunity at that belt, and for him to actually prevail and be victorious and to carry himself in such a classy fashion, I mean, it's just phenomenal. I mean, because by him doing that, what it did, it kind of gave the ears of some other people in some other sports, such as baseball, which Jackie Robinson was soon brought up in professional sports, that maybe African Americans can be successful in these
and it shows what America stands for. I think is that it's up to us what our future looks like. It's up to us what our city looks like.
Yeah.
It's up to us what we make of our lives.
That's true.
I want to thank John Barrow
for
coming on our show, and we wish you all the luck with this film. We appreciate you putting all this hard work into it, because I think it's very important to tell this story.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show. And you can refer to me now as JB.
JB.
My friends, they call me JB.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Again.
So hey, I appreciate you guys for having me out.
Check out the film, Inspiration of a Hero, and watch the progress. And thank you for watching Self Talk.
Yeah. Thank you, John.
Thank you.